We start. Thank you so much for coming in. You need me to be taller. I'm sitting on a low chair. Soon finally take me back. But you'll be able to see the screen, which I think is important. So, for our first presentation today, this show basically is about Pancha Tattva. It's a metaphor for 5 elements, and we have taken the 5 elements, which is one of them is the metal, which is copper, brass, and bronze. The second material is concrete. Then there is glass. Then we have textile, and we have wood. So I have taken the metaphors of wood being earth, concrete being fire, metal because the sound element is very important in metal, to space and ether because space is formed from sound, textile which is air, and glass which tries to capture the fluidity of water. So these are the 5 elements which are there in the show. There are 27 artists in the show and roughly distributed amongst all the materials. There are some artists who have worked across materials. So they have also given us work in wood, work in brass, work in glass, like that. So there are some artists who have presented works which are across the disciplines of different materials. And for this first thing, I thought that it would be nice for us to delve deeper into the whole metaphysics and the idea of Pancha Tattva, which is one of the most ancient concepts in our understanding of ourselves, and through ourselves, the actions that we undertake, the materials that we work with. And in that context, I'll introduce Dr. Soumya Gupta. Dr. Soumya Gupta received her PhD from NCTS, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, in Cell and Nuclear Biology and the National University of Singapore. Following that, she worked as a medical writer for many years. She now works for the Science Museum of Vedic Planetarium as a researcher to share a consciousness-based worldview of science and show the amalgamation of science and Vedic philosophy. I welcome you, Dr. Soumya Gupta. Can we have a round of applause?
Invited to this art gallery. As my title suggests, that I have nothing to do with art. My background is in science. I did a PhD in cell biology.
Speak a bit loud.
My background is in cell biology, so I'm a scientist by training. And only a few years ago, about 6 years ago, I became interested in Vedic metaphysics and science and philosophy. I had no interest in it. I never read anything about it prior to that. So I'd like to share something. Back in November, my brother Keshav, who has also his artwork installed in this gallery, he told me that he's working in an art gallery where the Panch Tattva, I prefer to use the word Panch Mahabhut. Those of you who may be familiar with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you know that we use Pancha Tattva in a different context. So if it's okay, I'll use the word Panch Mahabhut. So Keshav told me that this art gallery has the theme of Panch Mahabhut. And I told him that, well, I have some understanding of it because of my work with the Temple of Vedic Planetarium in Mayapur. I've been working there for about a year plus now. So as I mentioned, my background is in biology. So I was so busy studying the body. You know, what is this body made of? How does it function, etc. So I hope it's okay. It will be a little bit technical. But since all of you as artists are working on these materials, I hope what I share will be of some value to all of you. So as I mentioned, I was so busy studying. Is the screen visible? It's okay? So as a biologist, I was busy studying the body. And we study the body as, let's say, a skeletal system, a muscular system, or a system of different internal organs, etc. And this is extremely helpful, it's extremely valuable. Why? Because when we have some disease, some pains, etc., that's how we can treat it. My own specialization was in looking at blood cells, and that one kind of blood cells called T cells. I spent about 5-6 years just studying that. And while this is extremely helpful, I'd like to ask all of you a question. Why do we suffer when we have some disease? Let's say someone has diabetes, right? So there may be a problem in their insulin level secretions. Why does that person suffer? Any guesses, any thoughts, any ideas from the audience? Yes?
Isn't that an alarm to indicate that there's something wrong inside?
Okay, that's an alarm that something's wrong. But why does the person suffer?
Because of diet.
Because of
diet.
Diet, yes, exactly. So now because he has diabetes, he needs to restrict his diet. Suppose someone has some cancer in liver or stomach or something. Why does that person suffer?
Because the cell increases and it does go out of proportion and it affects your body because there's no space for that particular thing.
Okay, so that's happening inside my body, but why do I suffer?
Because we are unable to keep our mind and body separate. That's what, spiritually that's what it is. Like, scientifically I don't know.
So this is a question that I myself in my studies was not able to answer. So it brings me back to this question, what is the purpose of the body? What is the purpose of this body? As a biologist, I was studying it in such micro details. So what is the purpose?
To function properly all the time to be in that stage.
So what is that function of the body?
So,
To keep
They are
us
not
going,
suffering.
to keep us
No suffering.
No suffering, but it comes.
Yeah, maybe because of the emotions, because of the way.
So no one can avoid suffering.
factory चलाने के लिए.
फैक्ट्री चलाने के लिए, काम करने के लिए. और you could say आर्ट वर्क बनाने के लिए. आप कुछ कह रहे थे?
To keep going.
To keep going.
To continue that flow of life and the stages, the different stages of life that
So yes, you're kind of getting where I want to get. So here's a Vedic approach which I never encountered in my studies in mainstream science. The purpose of this body is to enable us to experience the world.
the world.
Experience the world and to express our desires, to enact them. So we experience the world, right? Like I'm standing here, I'm speaking, all of you are listening. There's an experience in there. And then to express our desires. For example, I had a desire, Ankur very kindly invited me, I had a desire, so I prepared this presentation and I'm speaking and I'm sharing with all of you. So many of you are artists, right? So you have created some pieces of art that you have installed in this gallery. So you have expressed yourself through something. So the Vedas tell us that the purpose of this body, there are more deeper purposes as well, such as to attain mukti or liberation. But for our purposes, let's just stick to these two. That we want to experience the world and we want to express ourselves. Now, if that were to be the purpose, then we must have the instrument, like the body must allow us to experience and express ourselves. So again, the Vedas tell us that our body does have those instruments. And that's called Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas. So as you can tell, Jnanendriya, the Indriya which help us, Indriya literally means senses, right? So Jnanendriya is that.
Can you increase the volume?
Jnanendriya is that which allows us to get knowledge, knowledge acquiring, all those things. It's knowledge acquiring senses. of which there are 5, right? We are all familiar with them. The sense of sight, the sense of sound, taste, touch, and smell. That's the only 5 ways we acquire knowledge of our surroundings, through these 5 Gyanendriyas. And then Karmendriyas, again there are 5. Anyone has an guess about the Karmendriyas, the action performing senses? Limbs, correct. So the hands and legs, which allow us to manipulate, they allow us to move. Any idea of what Mural said? Karmendriya, action performing senses?
Speech.
Voice, yes,
Eyes.
correct.
Eyes.
That's a Gyanendriya, because we get input through the... So sight, you can see sights on the Gyanendriya. And then there's genitals, the reproductive organs, and the anus. Because anus is also very important, otherwise we'll accumulate so much gunk that no one will be able to live beyond a few days. So for our purposes, I want to focus on the Gyanendriyas. But I really want to emphasize that it doesn't matter what life form, what kind of body we are looking at, whether an animal or a fish, a bird, even trees. This combination of the 10 indriyas, the Karmendriyas and Gyanendriyas, is found across all life forms. Absolutely. There's no species which doesn't have them. It may be in a very different way. For example, a snake, you don't see the legs, right? But it has mobility. Trees may have very little mobility, but still they have some ability to move. So they may look very different, but all species, all living things have these 10 indriyas, the Karmendriyas and Gyanendriyas. So now my next question is, how do our indriyas, and I'm focusing only on Gyanendriyas, the knowledge acquiring senses, how do they acquire the knowledge of our surroundings that they do? So our sense of hearing gets sound from the environment. Our sense of taste gets inputs of taste. Whatever we eat, whatever we drink, we get taste in that. Our sense of sight allows us to see. We see shapes and colors and forms, etc. Our sense of touch allows us to get feeling. So through the skin we get feeling. What is how hard or soft, cold, warm, etc. And then the sense of smell allows us to smell. So this may seem pretty straightforward. Okay, we have these indriyas, and that's why we are able to acquire knowledge of our surroundings. Actually, this is a very, very deep scientific and philosophical question. Why do we have these experiences? When light falls on our eye, why do we see a picture? When sound falls on our ear, why do we hear a sound? This is a question that's been going on for thousands of years. And at the moment, in the realm of science and philosophy, it's a very, very hotly debated question. And I'll share with you why that's a problem. So in science, we tend to look at everything as a combination of physical and chemical properties. And all of you must be very well aware of it because you are using those elements in your artwork. So you need to know how that product is going to behave at different humidity, different temperature conditions, etc. Right? So let's consider the example of visible light, visible from our human perspective, because other animals can see in other wavelength ranges. So for human beings, we usually see between 400 and 700 nanometers of wavelength. Now 400 nanometer wavelength feels like violet color. 550 nanometer wavelength feels like green color. We see it as green color. 700 feels like red color. So the question is, what is light made of? It is made of photons, which is a particle of energy. So why do photons of different wavelengths have different colors associated with them? We don't know. Yes?
I read this somewhere. So the color of an object is defined by the color. So let's say there are 7 colors, for example, and the object is able to absorb all the colors except for that one color, which is visible to us. All the other colors are absorbed, so they cannot be seen. But that one wavelength cannot penetrate. Is why it looks like it is that color.
Whatever is reflected back, you are saying, is the one that we see.
Is the color.
She is asking that why do we see it as a color?
Yeah, because that's the light that's
So,
the color
okay,
that
my
light
question
absorbs
is-
back into our eyes.
Yes.
White absorbs all the colors.
Okay, so you shine light, let's say, on a leaf, and it will absorb all of them except for
All the
what?
colors except for green.
For 550 nanometers, correct?
Yes.
So why does 550 nanometer feel like green color? Is the question.
Is the question. She's asking an even deeper question. That why is the wavelength feel like a color?
It's just a photon. Where is color in that?
Is the
Is
PhD
color
question.
inherent in the photon?
So
That's the question.
You've done the PhD, you have to tell us.
I didn't do PhD in this.
Right.
Let me make it more interesting. So we know that when we heat up something, let's say you heat up a room or you cool down a room. In physics, we learn that when you heat up something, the air molecules start moving faster. Correct? You heat up water, the water molecules start moving faster. So who's feeling the heat? Those air molecules? Are they thinking, oh, now we are vibrating faster, let me feel the heat? Who's feeling the heat? We do it. Our body feels it, right? What is happening? That faster moving air molecule is touching our skin. It's initiating the neurons to fire from the skin. It reaches into our brain. That electrical current that starts on the skin reaches the brain. There is electrical current in the brain. Where is the heat? Where's the heat gone?
It's energy, it's transferred.
But
From
it
heat
feels
to
like
electrical.
if there's electricity in the brain, where is the heat?
Where is the experience coming from? Is the question.
Let's consider salt, common salt, sodium chloride. It has a salty flavor to it, right? We all know that. What is sodium chloride made of? In chemistry, we learn this periodic table, right? Everything that we see around us can be broken down into these 100 plus elements. Everything.
Yeah.
So there's sodium somewhere there, chloride is somewhere there. What are these things? What's this whole periodic table? What is it made of?
It's made up of elements. Combinations
Made up
of atoms.
Atoms.
Yes.
And atom is made of electrons, protons and neutrons.
Yeah.
This entire periodic table, every element in our surrounds is made up of electrons, protons and neutrons. Just their numbers are different. So, is the saltiness of salt present in those electrons, protons and neutrons? Yes? Okay. So what about sugar? That is made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, which is also in this table. Why does sugar feel sweet?
Certain combinations of atoms create certain experiences for us.
But at the elemental level, they are all made up of the same
Yes.
atoms, electrons, neutrons, protons.
Correct.
So where is the flavor?
How they react with each other.
But then when it hits our tongue, it stimulates the nerves that goes into the brain as electrical current. तो वो electrical current experience कैसे बन गया? This is such mind-boggling question that the field of science and philosophy is dealing with now, and it's been dealing with it for millennia. So it seems like we need a new approach, or rather an old approach. So that's where I found Sankhya metaphysics comes in very handy, and I was introduced to it only a few years ago. So I'll give you a broad overview and then we'll zoom in on some of the elements. So in Sankhya, the most important thing is that everything is designed for a purpose. This universe is designed for a purpose, and it comes from someone. It is not coming randomly out of random chance interactions of electrons, protons and neutrons. So at the top is Mahavishnu, who glances at Pradhana. Then Pradhan becomes activated into Mahat Tattva. From there comes Ahankar. Then Ahankar interacts with the mode of goodness or Sattva, and that produces the mind and 10 sense devtas. Ahankar combining with the mode of passion or Rajas gives rise to Prana and 10 senses. And Ahankar combining with ignorance or Tamogun creates the Tan Matras and Mahabhutas. That was just a broad picture, but I want to focus on the elements. So in different sources, the counting of these elements may be a little bit different, but that's okay, it still serves the purpose. It can be 23, 24, 26, depending on certain elements being included or not. So first of all, there is Mahat, then there is ego, mind, intelligence, then there is the 5 karmendriyas, we already talked about that, the 5 jnanendriyas. The 5 tanmatras, I'll explain what that is, and the 5 mahabhutas, the panch tattvas, as most of you are more familiar with. So I just want to zoom in on these last 3, the jnanendriyas, the tanmatras and the mahabhutas, and what their significance is. So now I want to discuss how does the evolution of this universe happen from a Sankhya perspective. We learn in physics that in the beginning there was an extremely dense, extremely hot particle, and then from that started the whole universe. It expanded and it stimulated certain reactions, and as time went by, it caused the generation of this universe. It's called the Big Bang Theory. Most of you are probably familiar with that term. So likewise, in the Sankhya metaphysics, we learn how this universe comes about. So first of all, there is sound or Shabda in Sanskrit. And that sound creates the Mahabhut of ether or Kham in Sanskrit. So ether has the ability to carry sound because sound gives rise to the Mahabhut of ether. Then that ether gives rise to the Tanmatra of Sparsha or touch. And from touch evolves air or Vayu. From Vayu comes Rupa, form. Form gives rise to fire, Anala. From fire comes taste, Rasa. Taste gives rise to water. From water comes smell, Gandha. That gives rise to earth, Bhumi. So there you see your 5 elements that most of you are working with. Bhumi, Upper, Anala, Vayu, Kham, earth, water, fire, air, ether. And each of those Mahabhuta correspond to a particular Tanmatra. So what this is saying is that this is on the left in the red column, you see those things that we are perceiving. They are inherent qualities of the elements that this universe is made of. Because everything in our surroundings, the gross one, is made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, and also mind, intelligence, ego, but that's only in living beings. So 2-3 points to be noted here. First of all, you see everything goes from subtle to gross. So the way evolution of the universe happens, the way creation happens, it moves from subtle to gross. What does that mean? Most of you being artists, you are very well familiar with it. When you get an art idea, where does it appear?
As a thought.
As a thought in your mind, correct? So it's not there in the physical form, it's there as a vague idea in the mind. Subtle. And then it may become a little bit more clear. And then you take your elements with which you want to work and you make it into a gross form. Initially you might make a drawing or something and then you make it into a gross form that even others can see and perceive. So the way the universe grows is always from subtle to gross. So ether is the subtlest of the elements and Bhumi, earth, is the most gross of all the elements. The other thing to notice here is that from sound comes ether. So ether is able to carry sound. It's like sound has its screen. So when there is just sound present, we cannot perceive it unless there is ether present. Then the next level is touch and air. So now air carries the tanmatra of touch as well as sound. The effect already has the cause in it. So air carries the tanmatras of sound and touch. Next one, fire. So fire carries form, touch and sound. Water carries tanmatra of taste, form, touch and sound. And earth carries all five of them. Now normally, of course, we will not see these Mahabhutas in isolation. So we may question whether it's really like that. For example, if you make a fire from wood, so that does give you a fragrance, right? But we learn here that fire doesn't have smell, because smell comes after. But actually what's causing the smell in the fire? The material that's being burned. If we burn wood, we get a particular fragrance. If we burn paper or plastic, we get a different fragrance. So the fire itself is not carrying the fragrance, but the element that it is associated with is carrying the fragrance. Or for example, water is not meant to have smell, but it's because water mixes with earth that it will carry a smell. I would like to caution that do not consider this water to be the equivalent of H2O that we learn in our chemistry classes. I think these elements should be considered as parallels, but not exactly one-on-one with what we learn in physics and chemistry. So now you can understand why these Mahabhutas have these tanmatras, and thus they are directly associated with each of the Gyanendriya. So our sense of hearing is able to access sound because there is sound present in the element of ether. The universe has ether in it, and that's why our sense of hearing is able to hear sound. Our sense of touch is able to experience touch. It can experience heat or cold, wetness, dryness, softness, because it is a very property of the element air. Likewise, a sense of sight can see colors. Why? Because it exists. The universe is made of those elements, and when you have a sense, the sense of sight, and you have a person, the Atma, who can access it, then the colors are present. The colors are not inherent to the Mahabhuta. You need a person to be looking at it to have that experience. So when I was asking that, why does a 400 nanometer photon feel like blue color? So is the color out there in that light, in that 400 nanometer light, or is it there in my experience? Where is the color present? In my experience, not in my eyes. Because from eyes, the signal goes into the brain. The experience is present, to be more specific, on the screen of the mind. It feels like it's being seen on the eyes, but it's actually present on the screen of the mind. So thank you. That's what I wanted to share for this evening. I hope that little bit of introduction helped you understand the significance of why the Vedic insights are so valuable in our study of science and philosophy even today.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions to her? Anything pertaining to this which piqued your interest or your curiosity and you want to know a little more about it? We can take a few questions.
When they say in Upanishad, eye of the eye, ear of the ear, and some like what exactly does it mean?
So who's the I? Correct? Again, a big philosophy question, very, very hot nowadays. Who's the I? Is the I in this body? Where is the I? Where is the seer? Like he said that it's the color is there in the eyes. Is it there in the eyes? Literally, we learn this in science that when light hits the eye, it activates the retina, that activates the optic nerve, takes the signal into the brain. So where is the color? Where is the experience? Where is the picture being formed? It's formed because, so you can even take a camera, right? Camera can do exactly the same thing.
The lights they enter in the lens and then it makes a color.
So does the camera see the picture? Does it?
The lens sees the picture.
You think so?
Goes to the sensor.
You think the camera has an experience that I'm seeing red color, blue color, green color?
There is a sensor and the sunlight comes in the lens and the touch then make a color. I think.
Okay, so we can put a sensor and that can announce red color. Correct? And that sensor, when blue color light comes, it says blue color. Does that sensor have the experience of red or blue color?
I think it's because of
You have to
nature.
train it.
You have to train it.
You have to train it.
Does it sense? Does it have an experience कि मुझे लाल रंग दिख रहा है?
They see it, but they have to be taught कि ये रंग लाल है.
I think it's because of
Like
nature.
that's the learning part. When you're taught what is what as you're growing up. And
So it just repeats like a computer, right? It just repeats. You give it a new color which it has not learned and it will not give an answer.